Welcome to the Heart for God podcast. With many years of experience pastoring and helping to start churches, Dr. Jim Townsley has some practical and biblical advice that can be a great help to you and your ministry. On this podcast, Dr. Townsley and other guests with special expertise cover a variety of topics. His goal is to help you lead your church to be a healthy, strong, and balanced ministry, and for your family to be happy, healthy, and living for the Lord.
Hey, thanks for joining us today to the podcast. And I have with me today one of our graduates from New England Baptist College, Phil Rizzo. How you doing, Phil?
Yeah, I'm doing well. It's good to be here and honored to be on the podcast with you today.
So Phil has an interest in politics. Now, he started a couple of churches, and I'm hoping he gets back to pastoring again. But he took some time in between and got quite involved in politics. As a matter of fact, actually ran for governor in the state of New Jersey. And you did quite well. I mean, you're a brand new candidate out of nowhere, and you were in the primary, the runner-up. In fact, it was kind of close, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, when I ran for office in 2021, New Jersey's off-year election. Only New Jersey and Virginia run their statewide, their state elections on odd number years. So everybody else runs with the federal, which is the even numbers. But Virginia and New Jersey, we run in 21 and 25 for the state level. Our midterms are 23, obviously. And when I ran for office, I didn't know anything about politics. I didn't know what a county chairman was. I mean, our campaign was basically building an airplane mid-flight. But I knew it was what God wanted me to do. And I think by divine providence, we were the runner-up. We held our nominee to being a sub 50% nominee. He won the primary with 49%, which if New Jersey was a runoff state, it could be said that being the second place guy who beat the third place guy, obviously, who was also a pro-life conservative candidate, his voters would have come to me, and the sort of establishment Republicans, the conservative ones, would have had to make a real tough choice to stay with their quote-unquote chosen candidate or really vote for the conservative who aligned with them more. God didn't have that planned for my life, but statistically, things could have been much different. But we just ran a biblical campaign on great conservative values, and I think the Lord really blessed.
One of the things that I assume you found out the same thing, but you can give your thoughts on this. I'm actually surprised at how few pastors get involved in any way whatsoever in politics. Have you found that to be true?
I found it very true. Now that I'm not pastoring, we've started a new ministry called Project 29:2, which is named from Proverbs 29:2 that we know says, when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice, but when the wicked beareth rule, the people mourn. And it's a God and country ministry, and our objective is to get into Bible preaching churches and encourage the people to be involved in the government process, whether at bare minimum, get registered to vote and vote biblical values, or all the way up to involvement to becoming a candidate themselves. The resistance that we have had from pastors that say we don't put politics in the pulpit, quite honestly, has been astounding. And so, yeah, I know that this is an issue that we really need to stay after, because if Christians of any stripe would register to vote and vote biblical values, nationally, we'd never lose an election from president and Senate and House all the way down to school board candidates that are conservative minded. It's your son just said, and I love it. I laugh every time. We don't need a miracle. We just need involvement. Watching what's happening, especially here in the Northeast, with some of the policies, it doesn't seem crazy. It is crazy, and it seems lost. It's not lost. We just have to. I tell pastors, you don't have to live in the political weeds where I am, but you at least have to come off the sidelines. And if we would get pastors to see, it's really multiplication. It's not addition. It's multiplication, because how many individuals in America have a captive audience for 4 hours a week. Pastors are sitting in a major position of influence for the Great Commission, not only to preach the gospel, but to teach all things that the Word of God commands us, which certainly there's plenty in civics that the Bible gives a direction on.
Well, on top of that, I've found those who are not quite like us, not in our camp, new evangelical, more contemporary churches, I just thought that they're going to be really involved, and they're even worse. They're afraid to offend anybody in their church, again, and they won't take a stand even on abortion or anything that's biblical. I've just been amazed at that.
Yeah, the ultra love gospel. Obviously, we know waters down the gospel itself, but it really does water down what genuinely saved people, born again people. It really does hinder them from impacting their culture. And this emergent church idea of just living where you are and let your light emerge. Well, it's interesting that most of those churches with that kind of doctrine, their people don't really emerge. So yeah, it's a problem across all stripes and camps, if you will. But what Christians need to understand is someone is going to rule. And we're either going to get people with a biblical mindset to rule, or we're going to get anti-Bible people to rule. It's just a binary choice. And when we're not involved, we're letting the world decide who has really leadership over us.
And there are few countries that enjoy that freedom, and yet we take it for granted and don't get involved. I think that pastors sometimes just don't know what to do, and I'd like to talk about that a little bit. There's simple things you can do, just even announcing the election's coming up, register to vote. You can even get the registrar to come to your church, and they can register whatever. You don't have to choose sides, just you're preaching patriotism. And getting people to vote or register to vote is a very simple thing, and it's not biased. You shouldn't offend anybody by doing that. If you do, they're probably not with you anyway. But
right,
that
was one of the things the ministry of Project 29-2 would do. I would come to a church. We'd set up a table. We would preach a biblical message that was God and country, right? And at the end of the service, we would have voter registration forms to physically be filled out on our table, or we just put up a QR code if the church had like screens right from the pews. People could scan that QR code that would lead them right to the voter registration page, and they would register to vote. And we didn't tell people, because Project 29-2 is not a church, so it's an educational ministry. So we actually, I feel we're a little bit more bound to not be partisan, because we don't want to get churches in trouble. So we were always very nonpartisan. But a church, a pastor could really say, if you're going to vote, we want you to register and vote. But how could you sit in a church and say amen on Sunday and then go in the voting booth and vote for a pro-abortionist on Election Tuesday, or some DEI, candidate, or an LGBT pushing candidate? So churches have never really been bound. I think the bully pulpit, ironically, the bully pulpit of the Johnson Amendment, there have been pastors that have ignored that. And the government has never taken a church's 501c3, but they'll just play that game of attrition. Hey, if there's pastors that are going to, have their church endorse a candidate, well, we'll just chalk that one up as a loss, but we got 95% compliance. So they've never gone after a church's 501c3, because that would take the lid off, and pastors would realize they're coming for us. So they're doing it much slower. The boiling of the frog, it's much slower, but it's now on the doorstep for sure. It's time to be involved.
Well, there are more open things that you can do too if your church is trained and prepared for it, and that is invite candidates from both parties to come to your church service. if you have a Sunday night service, where else can someone go running for office and meet people in a group? Not many things are going on Sunday night or Sunday morning, or having a special day, patriotic day. Invite everybody. Invite the President of the United States to come. They'll send you a letter. Say, I'm sorry, I couldn't come. You can read that in the service. I mean, that people have to be trained to do this, and stress how important it is to get out and vote, get registered to vote, and go vote. We had an election for state representative that our guy lost by one vote.
Wow.
One vote. And you just think of how many people did not go vote thinking it did not matter.
What's the quote? The only thing for the triumph of evil is to have good men do nothing, right?
Yeah.
So that's where we're living today, and that's the purpose of the Project 29-2 ministry, is to reach the pastors, because if we can get pastors to understand this, they're reaching 50, 100, 200, 500, 700, whatever their church size is. It really is multiplication. And I've said to pastors, particularly here in the Northeast, that really shy away and say, Brother Rizzo, we don't put politics in the pulpit. First, I encourage them and say, abortion and life is not a political issue. It's a biblical issue. LGBT is not a political issue. It's a biblical issue. These things that are political in 2026 are biblically eternal truths. And so that's the first thing I try to help them with. And the second thing is here in the Northeast, I say, how many people have left your church for the South? And they just shake their head and roll their eyes, and they start with the stories. And I say, okay, well, here's your two choices. We can continue to be bound by this idea of separation of church and state. We can curtail our messages and make our messages quote unquote nonpartisan, and we can keep losing our bus captains and our deacons and our Sunday school teachers to the South, or we can preach biblical truth that may offend somebody of a different political persuasion from leaving our church. You're going to lose people anyway, but why lose your faithful co-laborers to the South when we can lose a few sort of liberally minded, when it comes to politics, liberally minded church members? You're going to lose them one way or the other. You might as well keep the good ones.
Well, that's an excellent point, because we have lost so many people, and a lot of the reasons is the liberal policies. That's a lot of the reasons why people leave. They say we can't afford to be here, the taxes are too high. Now, what they don't realize, it's not cheap down south anymore either. And the weather in Florida is worse than facing winter here. I'd rather face winter than a hurricane and heat where you can't go outside. And the cost is expensive there. Now, there are places in rural areas you can pay $1,000 a year for your home taxes, but there's no jobs. And people don't realize it's almost as cheap, maybe not New Jersey, but in Connecticut, there are places it's comparable to buy a home and live, but it's the policies. They keep taxing everything, and people get tired of it. So, and 40% are conservative, and yet we don't have one representative in all the 6 New England states. Not one. They're all Democrat.
Yeah. And to the point on the expense, what you said is 1,000% true about the weather and the cost of living. And yet people are still choosing it by huge numbers. California, Massachusetts, and New Jersey and I think Illinois are the top 4 out-migration states to the South. And all of them are expensive. Florida is not cheaper, but I believe it comes down to the policies where people want to be able to start businesses. They want to be able to put their children in non-perverted education. And so they'll say, yeah, I'll take hurricane and equal cost, but at least, I don't have to worry about sending my kids to school and them trying to teach Johnny he should become Jenny without my consent. And so the policy is really the driver. I don't think it's cost anymore. It used to be the cost, but it's not the cost anymore. It's Florida's expensive. expensive.
And Midlands, North Carolina and South Carolina, it's not cheap there anymore. You can't buy a home cheaper there. You years ago could, but you can't anymore. My sister ended up moving to Texas, and she could not believe the cost of a home in Texas. She's in College Station, and the water bill is $300 a month just for the water bill.
Right.
Now, politically, it's much more favorable for a conservative person to be there, but it wasn't cheap.
And the people that want to move to those states, what they'll say is, well, there's no state income tax, so I keep what I earn. And so, yeah, the water bill's high or the insurance is high. I think Florida has some of the highest insurance rates for automobile.
You can't get insurance on your home in a lot of places.
Yep, automobile and home insurance, I think, is pushing the highest in the country. But people are saying, okay, well, I'll pay it because I get to keep all of my income anyway.
And along the coastline, the traffic is horrendous.
My parents are on the East Coast. It's wild, the amount of traffic, yeah.
And they have these roads that intersect, and it's like there are 10 sections of who can go and what time, and you can sit there forever at the stoplight.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan, so, as you can tell. But hey, I'll go visit, and spend a week or two in warm weather, and I'll come back home.
Yeah, and I think what's happening is the tide is changing, and it's happening slower than I'd like to see. It's like watching the Titanic turn, right? But it is starting to turn because the anti-God liberal agenda of our elected officials is now on the doorstep of the church. And, our prayer obviously is, that it's not too late. If the foundations be destroyed, what can the righteous do? There will come a point where it is too late. I am not so sure we're there now. So I'm enjoying to witness the turn, but it better hurry up here and turn. Otherwise, we're gonna go down. We're gonna sink.
Well, I think you'll agree with me that a pastor needs to be a pastor. That's his primary calling. That this, though, doesn't take a whole lot of time. I mean, it doesn't have to. With very little time, you can make a huge difference just with a philosophical change.
Yeah, for sure. I have a pastor friend in central New Jersey. His church is about 100 people, but he has a few good men in his church that help with the ministry. Not only is he the pastor of the church, but he was the mayor of his town. And I asked him, I said, how are you doing that with time management? When you're the mayor of a town, there is more time. And there was. He said, well, we have 3-4 men in our church that make it possible with time. And so that's somebody who's a sitting elected official, to just simply be involved and encourage your people to be registered to vote and vote conservative values and to have a good understanding of biblical civics. The Apostle Paul, he was about preaching the gospel, as we should. But there came a point where he said, is it lawful for you to beat a Roman citizen uncondemned? There came a point where the leadership pushed him to understand, not that he didn't understand it already, but pushed him to exercise his dual citizenship. If you're born again, if you're saved, you're a citizen of heaven. Jesus is preparing a mansion for you when you're in eternity. But we're not there yet. And so citizens of the United States, in order for us to be good citizens, we need to exercise our rights here as well.
Well, thank you for taking a little bit of time. I appreciate it very much and appreciate what you've been doing and continue to do. But if you're listening to this and you're not involved, you ask yourself this question, is it right? Am I ignoring something that the Bible is very explicit about, to be involved in this process? I'm convinced that you should be. So, do something. Learn more about what's going on. Get involved. Help a candidate. At least get people registered to vote. Well, thank you so much for listening today. God bless you. Have a good day.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the podcast, consider sharing it with a friend. You can also follow at Dr. Townsley on Twitter or on Facebook at Jim Townsley.